Hello, my name is Sean Thompson. I am a tech coach, teacher, and all-around kind of go-to it for tech support guy here at an international school in Tokyo. I want to talk today about something that it's definitely a whole school, but it's always going to involve somebody with technical skills. So that probably is why you're here. This is something you're going to need to learn and then perhaps take back to your administration. I know a lot of schools are getting stronger mandates that you need to start really displaying data and using data in a more meaningful way. So that's what this whole thing is about today. We're going to start talking about like kind of a whole school thing and working our way down from macro to micro, as you often do with data as well. And really just trying to sort out what does it mean if we want to use Google Data Studio for visualizing our data in an effective way. I have a co-presenter today. There'll be some videos later on explaining how to use a few different incarnations, shall I say, of different dashboards we've made, and explaining how they might be useful to have these conversations that are really about sort of empowering curiosity to empower student learning at our schools. By the end of it, you'll have seen all of those things, and I'll try and squeeze in at the end maybe just a little quick tutorial about how to start managing work in the Google Data Studio. There's a couple of different options. You can do it all in-house or you can do it with somebody else, but for a lot of us schools out there, we don't want to have somebody full-time. But we do need to have somebody who's up to snuff, as it were, when it comes to collecting, collating, cleaning, formatting, and sharing data. So without further ado, let's get started. W. Edward Deming was an American engineer, statistician, professor, author, lecturer, and management consultant. He tells us that without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Step one is who is going to be involved in the data right from the start. Number two, we go to a macro workflow looking at the biggest picture possible. We move then to a yearly whole school timeline. Then we walk through some sample data dashboards. We move next into what's most important to the technical person involved, a timeline of data management for the data person. We also then talk on some next steps and things of other things you need to consider once you have data up and running. And then of course there's a look at a whole slew of resources for going further. So if your school employs a learning data analysis specialist or LDAS, all the technical work falls to them. If you opt for a third-party data service, you still require a liaison. What this means basically is someone in-house capable of collating, cleaning, formatting, sharing, and liaising with your external data team to manage all the data you've collected. Now for the macro workflow. Your administration needs to commit to the plan. The project then really gets in full flow. We really start commencing. Now you're either a data liaison, data collection, collation, formatting, and go-between, or the LDAS. This depends on your school's situation. All faculty will use the data, but this is a down the road a piece part. So it's an easy concept to grasp, a whole school timeline, but flexibility and patience are fundamental. Make sure you have regular enough meetings that everyone understands the project's development. We start with a timeline for data collection. Simply put, when do we get the data? We tie that to the next chronological step of dealing with the data to ensure it is in the most meaningful format to support greater levels of achievement. Finally, we plan the calendar dates to plan out our data days. There's more on this later because getting the data is a big piece, but if we don't know how to use it in an efficient and meaningful way, we're really not using our time the best. All right, we will now take a little walk through some examples of how to use the Google Data Studio dashboards and how they lead to conversations that empower our curiosity.
Taking a look at a student data profile, what we can find out is a lot about the student in just one quick look. We can take a look at wellness data and say, wow, the student is really motivated to learn, but also has a high stress level. Okay, well, seems like the sleep and online academic time is not too much. We take a look at his MAP scores and we say, wow, his MAP scores are really high. And I can think about, he's been here for 3 years, or she's been here for 3 years, identifies as a female. I know when their birthday is. That's coming up in a month. Okay, and I can say, in digital photography, it looks like there's a beginning. So I can click there, and I can find a little bit more information about what exactly that assignment was, and maybe that's going to enable a conversation to talk with the student on how they're doing with these assignments. Click on another one to find out what were those 3 approachings. Okay, pitch, tone, and expression. That was way back in September 27th, so maybe things have changed by now. So this could help you enable some conversations. Might talk about how math class is going, and and or strings class, or maybe I'd really probably dig into the digital photography class and try to figure out what's going on. So lots of different ways to use this information to have great conversation with your students. Okay, so in this section of the protocol is the here's what. Here's what data we are looking at. The first thing we're going to want to do is make sure that we all understand what we're looking at. What we're looking at here is standards-based report card data, and the green bars are going to be all of the achieving results. So you can even hover over there and find out how many and the percentage. The orange is going to be approaching, and the red is going to be beginning, all the students that were beginning. And over here, these are the strands of the standards. You can set this up by standard or strand or any domain that you'd like. But let's take a look at math class, because I'm working with a group of math teachers. So what I can do easily on this dashboard is click on math, and then I can see the breakdown and the distribution of proficiencies against these strands. So I'm going to start saying what I notice. All right, let's take a look at exponents. I notice that exponents has the most beginning results out of any of the strands. Also, I notice that communicate and reasoning with equations also has lots of beginnings. I notice that the next level of beginnings is going to be integers and ratios, but significantly the beginnings are dropping after exponents, communication, reasoning, and reasoning with equations. I also notice that linear equations and fractions have the most achieving. That's really interesting. I notice that the most orange is geometry with students approaching. So almost there, but not just yet. So why don't you explore and find out the things that you're noticing, maybe in a subject that you're involved with. Now that we've identified what we've noticed within this math data here, we can now move on to the so what phase. It's great to have some guiding questions to help us with our thinking. So, how does these student results fit with your thinking, what we see in the class? We might start to think, you know what? Exponents and communication have been a really tough unit for the students. The students really need some more time on that. I also think that communication and reasoning are really hard things for students to be able to get. When they're communicating their understanding and communicating their reasoning, they're really struggling with that. So I wonder, what kind of student work could we be looking at to try to identify where are the parts that they're struggling with the most? How might that be able to help us identify rubrics and other assessments that might help us better get students to achieve in these standards? Also, let's take a look at some fractions linear equations. I know that students are doing really well with fractions and linear equations, as we've gone over it many times this year, and students seem pretty comfortable with these strands. I wonder how we can take some of the success that students are getting in these strands and standards to help them out with their communication, reasoning, and their exponents.
All right, back to you, the technical support that is fundamental to visualizing the data. I've boiled it down to 10 recursive steps here. Bear in mind, you may be acting on several steps at any one time, especially in the setup phase. Also, troubleshooting is ongoing as well. So just looking at our steps, we have planning. You need to talk to the people who have ideas of what it is they want to look at, what data you want to look at and how you want to see it, how to best visualize it for teachers to use to empower student learning. You start out making your first dashboard if you're going all on your own. This involves collecting data, cleaning the data, attaching it to the dashboard, formatting it in the Google Data Studio. We found that the use of color coding with things like PSAT and MAP comes very handy, especially when MAP has its own color code already created. Finally, we take what we think is going to work back to the administration for some feedback. Is it what they want? Do we need to make changes? Then we go back to do some random accuracy testing just to make sure. It's a big job. We want to make sure that it's correct. This is fundamental. Then we get to our data days and on to our next dashboards. Now, the data itself, while fundamental, is only one big part of an even bigger puzzle. As this screenshot from the Smart Data for Schools resource page illustrates, the manner in which we support the use of the data dashboards is where the real utility comes in. If we can't use the tools, do we really even need them? in a blank Chrome browser. I'm just going to go to datastudio.google.com and quickly show you a couple of little things. So we have reports and data sources. Those are the big ones, especially for what we're doing right now. I'm going to open up a blank report. It's going to immediately ask me for a data source because why else would I make one, right? I'm going to go over here to grade 10 sample data. I could have gone through open from Google Drive. Double tap on it. Sheet 1, that's what I want. I'm going to add that data source. It automatically goes in there, so we're off and running. I'm going to add that to the report. Now before we actually get here, why don't we just show you some quick things here about, like, you want to set it up so that it's user friendly. Just going to quickly add a banner, right? And I'm not sure what my school's color theme is. Maybe we're an aqua, I don't know. Let's add some text to it. It's Google, so I can get it in there and sort it out pretty simply. Sample, Command A grabs all that, make it nice and big. It's our header after all, put it in the center, just the way you'd expect it to operate, right? Make sure that's aligned properly. Always important to have the principle of design represented. Now over here in our data, I want to make sure that this is showing the way that I want it to, so that it's useful for the teachers and administration looking at it. Maybe you have some dashboards developed for counseling staff as well. So back to data, you can see that's selected. I'm in data, it's got the name. Let's add another dimension. Let's grab my homeroom. These are things you want to know right off the bat. Who am I looking at? Now there's a lot more to it than this. This is very simply as simple as I can make it right now. Now over here, all these things I don't like. Maybe you like to have the headers in there. I think they're pretty obvious. I'll leave that to you. The number of rows, I don't think we need that. So right off the bat, I'm just gonna kill pagination. I can resize it however I like. Do finger tap. I can resize the columns however I want, distribute evenly. Now, my name is not that long. Homerooms aren't generally that long. The image I'm going to want to have bigger. Of record count, I don't think I want that. So back to data. All right, I'm just going to kill the record count. So now we have this, right? It's pretty simple. Over here, very simple, googly, Command B, Command I on the Mac. I've left in these headers up here if you like. You can leave them up there. If you want to, you can scroll down a little bit and put things in the center. I don't think I'd do that for that. All right, let's take a view of it. All right, we got my aqua blue, says sample. Clearly I'm Sean Thompson. I'm in the ICT cave as my homeroom. The image isn't working, however, so let's go back to edit mode here. Let's select our table. Again, go to style. I don't have to show the header. I could make these larger, right? Now, here's the thing. Back in data, pardon me, scroll to the top. Let's grab this. Let's edit. Maybe just an image. I can do this. Move from URL to image. This was very frustrating for some time. Now let's go to view. What do we have now? We can see the sample. We can see who I am, where my homeroom is, and what I look like. Oftentimes I do a scatter graph over here so we can see outliers, and whatever it is your needs are as a school, go beneath that. Oftentimes I'll also have on the left hand side here a whole class list, so I can go student by student. I personally find the scatter graph is better for organizing. It's about your school's needs. It's not about what I think. So there very quickly is an example of just how you can go in. It seems pretty simple. It's Google, so it is, it's nice GUI, a nice graphic user interface. A lot of times it gets trickier when you're trying to do more difficult things, but about formatting the spreadsheets is what you really need to get really strong with right off the bat. It's all about organization and efficiency. We need the roadmap to achieve optimal utility. That's why we create so many visualized steps to support schools throughout the process. Feel free to use the free resources at www.smartdataforschools.com. You'll find an interactive dashboard in the blog post entitled Wellness Data, an interactive example. We look forward to hearing from anyone interested in taking this conversation further. Until then, go in, get your hands dirty, so to speak, and enjoy starting to manipulate your data to make it even more useful for your schools as you go further along down that path.